Good afternoon. Thank you all for coming today to what we think is a super important topic, realtor safety. We're going to try to keep this event as interactive as possible because I see a whole lot of seasoned real estate professionals in this room that probably have a lot of really good stories. And we would like to hear them. We would like to keep the stories real and the strategies real for our realtors. You have a unique business that you're in. I don't think there are too many careers where you will have somebody call you up on a Friday night that you've never met before, and they want to meet you across town at a vacant property, and you're like, hey, let's do that, right? But realtors are expected to do that all the time, and sometimes people get offended if you are a little reluctant to do that. So we're going to talk about some of those strategies today. But before we get into that, allow me to introduce myself. I think I know most of you. My name is Pam Van Leuven. I'm the Senior Vice President here at GRAR. 2018 marks my 30-year anniversary with GRAR. Thank you. I was hoping for applause, so thank you so much. That's great. I love this industry, and I love the people. You're what makes it so important to me, so I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. So thank you for being here today. It's my pleasure to introduce our instructors and facilitators. We're going to start here with Mr. Dale Stuckey with Greenridge Realty. Dale was the 2016 president of GRAR, still very, very involved with GRAR. How many years in the business?
28.
28. We're going to clap for Dale, too. Mr. Tom Kuiper. Tom is an elected member of our board of directors. He's the director liaison to our safety task force. And you're going to win this contest, aren't you? How many years?
40.
40. And last but certainly not least, Mr. Wayne Wu, realtor with Keller Williams Rivertown. Wayne, shout out for KW. Wayne is our realtor safety task force chairperson, and he's uniquely qualified for that position. In addition to being a realtor for how many years, Wayne? In real estate?
5.
5 years. But before that, 20 years or more with the Grand Rapids Police Department and in law enforcement and tactical training, and before that with the Chicago PD. So very well qualified to represent us in this role. So thank you for being here. Julie Rietberg, our CEO, will be sneaking in a little bit later. She had a meeting that she had to be at, but she hopes to join us as well. I'll get in trouble if I tell you how many years she's been with GRAR, but we're very, very fortunate to have her as our CEO. She's my mentor, my friend, and I look forward to her joining us. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the floor over to Dale Stuckey.
Okay, thank you, Pam. Just want to welcome all of you for coming today. As Pam mentioned, I was the 2016 president of GRAR, and my initiative was realtor safety. I wanted to get that out there before we got in front of the news for some incident. Why is that important? Like I said, we don't want to find out something happened and we didn't do anything about it. So Wayne, you've heard 20 plus years in the police department. He's going to go over awareness and prevention. So I think that's important that we listen to that. We do have 2 hours of Con Ed, so we were able to get that. And also for you that are here, we have Northern Tactical does an on-hands training course here that's absolutely marvelous. I don't know if anybody in the room here has taken it yet, but we're going to offer that to you for being here at 50% off. The board of directors is going to pick up the other half. So we'll send an email out to you asking if you want to sign up after this meeting. So without further ado, I will hand this over to Wayne, and he will start the program. Thanks, Wayne.
I think. There we go. All right. Pam, do you want to go over a couple stories real quick before we start the slideshow? Does that sound okay?
Sure. Would you like to hear some real-life stories?
Clapping.
So you may have noticed the email that went out from me you probably notice a lot of emails that go out from me. I apologize for that. But we sent out a message to the membership asking all of you to tell us your stories. Tell us what's happened to you over the years in the industry where maybe it didn't get reported to the police, but something happened that made the hair on the back of your neck stand up and you thought, you know what, this isn't right. And a number of you responded, and most preferred that we not share their names. So we're not going to do that, but we're going to share a couple stories with you today. And in doing so, we want to talk to you a little bit about those stories. Maybe what we could have done differently. Has this ever happened to you? Do you have a story today that you're compelled to share with us? If so, we'd like to know. So I was telling my friends up here that this particular story, when it came in, made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. So I'm going to start with this one. It said, my buyer clients were interested in a distressed rural property in the middle of absolute nowhere. We've all been there before, right? That had a small house and a barn on it. It was listed by a realtor, but the seller did not want to use a key box and insisted on unlocking the property for all showings. The house was vacant, except for a lot of trash that was strewn about everywhere, and a gun cabinet with several guns in it. While I was waiting for my buyer family of 5 to arrive, I realized there was no cell signal out there. The seller met me as planned and unlocked the door, but then he refused to leave. He started chit-chatting, and initially it was in a nice way, and I tried to ask him several times to please leave so I could show the property. He then took out a big wad of keys and said he wanted to show me his gun collection. I was pretty shocked and told him one of us is leaving right now, and that I didn't want unlocked guns around the family when they arrived. He laughed at me and started going key by key, trying to unlock his gun cabinet. It occurred to me that if I left and drove off, my buyer family might show up and he might well have a gun out of the cabinet by that time. Without a phone signal, I might not be able to warn them. Before I could do or say anything else, the family pulled up and the kids started running around. Thankfully, the seller left the house, but I wasn't sure that he actually left the property or the barn. I did the quickest showing in the history of real estate and made sure that they were out the door, and then I followed them off the property. I made some excuse about not being able to show the barn. A couple of days later, the bank seized this property, and we never went back. Any thoughts on that from a law enforcement background?
Gosh. I guess anytime you're showing a house, you want to make sure the guns are locked up. Well, it'd be good to know their guns are on the property. That'd be something I think that I at least share in maybe agent-only comments or something like that. But yeah, it's kind of, you're in a predicament. What do you do for your clients if you're in a spot where you're not feeling comfortable, but they're not there yet, and your concern is for their safety? So what is it that you can do? And that may be one of those things that you address before you even go out for showings. If you arrive at the property, just stay in the car until you see me arrive. This is what my car looks like. When I step out of the car, then we'll go on up to the house. But that would be a good thing for them to know, and it doesn't have to be a dramatic presentation that you give them, but just let them know that for the convenience of the owners or the sellers, when you arrive, just stay in your car until you arrive if you're there before I am. Then when you see me, go ahead and hop out of the car. So that way, if you have to leave and you're in a hurry to take off, and they arrive afterwards, they're staying in their car. And hopefully, at some point between you deciding to leave and getting off the property, you're calling them and saying, hey, let's not see this house. So that'd be my thought.
If at any time one of these stories or the discussion inspires you to share, please just shout it out. Or raise your hand or get our attention somehow, because this session today, although it qualifies for Con Ed credits and it's very important, we also want it to be informal to the extent that it's a conversation. So we want to just talk about this because it's so very important. Shall I share another?
Why don't we go ahead and get started?
Okay.
I think probably it'd be a good idea. So we have a few more to do, and then what we probably want to do is on one of them, we'll have you guys kind of critique it yourselves and give some thoughts on what's going on. So, and I want to echo what Pam said. The value here is knowing what you need and what you're concerned with and what issues you have been presented with, and there's no shame in A, experiencing this because it's not your fault, and B, sharing that with other people because that's how we learn. And a lot of these things, the common denominator on a lot of these issues is going to be communication. Communication with Pam, communication with your broker, communication with other agents, because that's how we keep ourselves safe. And as you've seen with this last issue with Bill Clinton, it's the sharing that kind of headed off the problem. And I don't want to be premature in saying solving it, but at least put us in a position where we can take more affirmative action if we need to. So, does that sound about right?
Some of you are looking like you don't know what that Bill Clinton comment was.
So, if you've been following the GRAR Facebook page over the past year, anybody not know what I'm talking about, go ahead and raise your hand. It's not a big deal if you don't. So we've had an individual that's been frequenting open houses. There we go. Yeah. So when you ask him to sign it, he signs Bill Clinton all the time. So, but the common denominators here are that he likes to go to female agent open houses. He usually winds up in the master bedroom or a bedroom, and he likes to go through drawers and closets. So usually the story is that he has family in Germany that are going to be coming over, and he's been looking for a house. And this is the second season, busy season that we've had where he's given those types of background information. So we know he's been around for a little while, but made a lot of people uneasy. He's kind of a bigger guy, so it'd be easy for him to give you kind of a confrontational or predatory perception. But he's just kind of an odd fella, And I think that our ability to kind of track where he's been through the Facebook page and talking about, okay, I had this incident, direct them to Pam. We can kind of coordinate all this information, talk with the different law enforcement agencies that have been involved. We finally were able to, with an agent that had conversation and contact multiple times with him, identify who he is, had a law enforcement agency go out and talk with him, let him know that he's not welcome at open houses any longer. There we go. Yeah, very good. Very good job. Yes, sir.
How long ago did you guys reach out to him
Within the last 2 weeks.
Okay.
So.
I held an open house. I'd have to get the exact date, probably about a month and a half ago, where I don't. Seems like the same story, but I couldn't recall if it was from Germany or not. But he came in, seemed odd. He refused to sign in, but he said he was looking for houses for his son, who was out of the country. Older gentleman. He seemed odd. He was walking around.
Yeah.
I was sitting on the main floor. Obviously, I did not see what he did upstairs in the bedrooms or anything like that. But some sellers didn't report anything out of the ordinary after the open house.
Yeah, we've not had any reports that he's taken anything,
Okay.
but
Yeah, I was just,
it sounds like it could have been.
okay.
It sounds like it could have been.
I can't even recall. He said his son was coming from.
Okay. Right.
So, but yeah, he just seemed off. And I had a lot of activity through the house where I just didn't have the
Yeah.
chance to argue with him to have him leave.
No, that's kind of common. And one of the things we're going to go over here is some strategies that we've been actually working on this year with the 2018 Safety Task Force about getting your seller's consent to let you be the authority on the property to say, okay, you need to leave, and for that to be a lawful order. Otherwise, the person's trespassing. Not that you need to, grab a hold of somebody and escort them out, but if you're calling 911, you're saying, I have a person on the property that will not leave, it's good to know that you have that authority from the seller to eject somebody. Does that make sense? Okay. So
This gentleman didn't take anything that we're aware of. Was caught going to the closet, one of our realtor members of rather creepy home. So just generally creepy.
there's no limit to the amount of strangeness that's out there. I tell you what, man. All right, is anybody? I know there's a few faces that I recognize from previous times that I've given this presentation. Anybody seen my presentation before? And it's not the same one that I give at. Well, it's kind of the same to new agents. One of the things that we've incorporated over the past year is talking with new agents about this, because the best time to establish good habits is when you're starting your new business, right? So you get into that routine. You don't have to break old habits because you're learning the right way. So that's one of the things we've been doing. But this presentation has kind of evolved over the past couple of years, and there's a lot of information. And unfortunately, I've got a really high C on the disc. So if anybody know what that means, I'm very detail oriented. So I'm not going to bore you with the details of the slides, but there's always something new to put in these things. I want to focus on what's important with you guys. So if you see something up there that maybe I don't cover as much as you would want, or you have questions about, please, raise your hand. If I don't see your hand, shout out to me that hey, can you cover that a little bit more? And I'm not going to be offended because I probably am going through it very quickly. So does that sound good? All right. So this is the funny slide that Pam stole from me and put on your outlet, by the way. I found this. This is mine. So, now we did a survey back in 2016. I don't know if you remember it. You've got an email about it, and it was in the summer, so it was kind of busy, and we had probably a little bit over 10% response rate, which is really good for surveys. But we probably are going to see another survey come out this summer. So please, if you can, take the survey. It really focuses us on what we really need to work on as far as agents and what their concerns are, and where there may be some training issues that we need to address. So I'll go over those stats just really quickly. Then we're going to talk about the prevention and escape piece, which is what we highlight. And then discuss the Northern Tactical Training. And here's Jules. Thanks, Jules. Okay. As if she didn't announce herself by turning the lights off, so. Anyhow. So in discussing the Northern Tactical, I'm going to use Julie as an example. She did a really good job during our maiden run of the training with the board of directors. And then we'll discuss some things that you may have with you already with regard to smartphones and how they work, but also the Wear Safe device, which is I think it's probably one of our best tools with accountability and keeping not only our agents safe, but also our kids, maybe our elderly parents as well. So. All right. Our biggest issue right now, and I think it's traditionally our biggest issue, and Pam kind of addressed it at the intro, is the vast majority of us meet our clients for the first time where? At the property, right? So we really don't have a lot of information on them. Maybe not as much as we should. Maybe we're not doing as much homework as we should. But that, I think it really falls through the cracks in the amount of control that we give up if we're not at least doing a social media search. There are some apps out there that we're going to be taking a look at from the Safety Task Force standpoint. One is called Forewarn, where if somebody calls you, you can enter their number into this app, and it gives you just a lot of information on the individual. I think the Lakeshore just adopted this as an association application that they're providing. We had an individual in here from the Detroit Association, and they have also adopted this. So it's going to be something we're looking at. But suffice it to say, what can we do from the standpoint of getting information before we go out to meet somebody that will at least give us some clue as to who they are, whether they're ready to buy, whether they can buy, and whether they pose a threat to us. Anybody? Pre-approval? Yeah, so a pre-approval letter, I mean, both from a business standpoint and a safety standpoint, I think that as kind of a fence or gatekeeping type of instrument that you use in your business would be a great idea, because you don't want to waste your time out there, especially when you're struggling right now with 7, 8 buyers for every house that's available, to find out that your client is not capable of purchasing the house after you've seen so many of them. So I mean, I think we are doing ourselves a disservice if we're not vetting our clients with at least a pre-approval or pre-qualification ahead of time. And then social media, I think, is another thing that you can use when you get your potential buyer information, or your seller information for that matter. A lot of people share way too much on social media, yes? So is it easy to find out who they are, how long they've been there, especially with their account, and how often they post, maybe what their temperament is, based on what they post or what they respond to? I mean, is that a wealth of information? I mean, especially in you determining how you're going to approach this person from a sales standpoint or a relationship standpoint. So I think those are other things that we could be doing that we're probably not as much as we should. So I'm sorry, go ahead. Okay. Okay. And if you don't mind me asking, what does that cost you on a monthly basis? Okay. Okay. Jules, did you want to say something? Right. So it's just a piece of the puzzle, right? Right. And the other thing to think about when I don't know if you've had this experience or not, when you run a criminal history or you run somebody, do you get some false hits on people that their name is kind of the same or their date of birth is kind of the same, but it's really not them? So just be really careful on the wealth of information that you give and how you use it, because it would be a shame to single somebody out because maybe you thought they were person A or person B and they're actually person C. So just a lot of these apps are going to just give you, okay, here's everything on John Smith, and then you got to figure out, now, which John Smith do I have here? So I think it's very important. Sir, I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. These were the responses that you could have given. It's kind of multiple choice. So it didn't really say whether you were a buyer's agent, whether you're going to the property to for a listing meeting. It didn't matter. Just where are you meeting these folks? This is probably going to be changed quite a bit if we take the survey now, because I know there's some brokerages that have adopted new safety programs, or at least put something to their agents on, okay, if this happens, this is what we would like you to do. And they're essentially guidelines, because we're independent contractors, right? So in 16, the vast majority of people said they either didn't know whether their brokerage had a safety plan, or they knew for sure that they didn't have one. So that was quite a big figure, I guess, at that time. 40% of the people who were surveyed indicated they had been in some kind of situation where they felt uneasy. Like Pam said, the hair on your back of your neck was kind of tingling, had some gut feeling that something wasn't right. I think anybody had that in here. I think if you haven't had that, you probably got your nose buried in your phone too much. I mean, there are some strange people out there. So if you don't have your antenna up, picking up on these strange folks, you're really not paying attention. Yes, ma'am. Yep. You're gonna see that as a common theme here. If your body is reacting to something, it's not some sixth sense. It's observations that your body is making. It is, these innate things that we've had in us since we've been, since we were hitting saber-toothed tigers with clubs and stuff, They're there for a reason. We need to listen to them. I think there was a hand back here. Yes. Yeah. No. Did they sign? All right. There we go. That's going to be in the book, right? All right. All right. This is the alarming thing, though. Okay. So we said 40% of those surveyed indicated they had been in a situation where they felt uneasy or feared for their safety. Of those 40%, 60% didn't say anything to anybody. All right? And we kind of learned that here because, there were several individuals over the course of the Bill Clinton, span of activity that said, you know what, he was here. I had him last year. Or you know what, he was at my place last month. And yeah, he did act strange. Or, I got a bad vibe with him. And that was a common theme with everybody who had contact with him. They all had the same experience. This guy was not right. There was something going on with him. But I think a lot of times, like the lady said in the green sweater here, is when we have that gut feeling, we tend to ignore it, or we tend to not have the confidence to act on it, and we keep on moving forward towards that danger when our body is telling us, you know what, you better put the brakes on and reassess what's going on here. And that's where I think sometimes our situational awareness or our environmental awareness is really trying to tell us something, and we're really focused in on this deal or this money or whatever the case may be. So, and we're just not listening.
Can you all hear me? No? Thank you. That they're maybe just a little bit socially awkward, but they're not necessarily a threat. And I still think, like you said, you meet enough people every day in your business that if you stop and think about it for a second, you're probably going to be able to distinguish who's just a little uncomfortable or shy versus this person gives me the creeps.
Yes, ma'am. Yep, I agree. All right, this slide real quick. 1 in 10 agents who took the survey indicated they were a victim of a crime during the course of their duties as an agent. So, and it kind of varied as to what the crime was. So it could be having your sign stolen or being assaulted. But we've got over 100 people in attendance today. So if you look around, 10 of you over the course of your career are going to be the victim of a crime as an agent. I mean, it's kind of a scary odd, isn't it? And then 40% of the respondents indicated they carry some type of a self-defense device, with the overwhelming device being pepper spray. Second was a concealed firearm. So don't want to talk a whole lot about this other than a couple of bullet points here. What you choose, you got to know how to use it properly. You have to train with it, because any device that you use is not going to be second nature to you. And you want to be able to react to a threat and not have to go through a thought process to react. Does that make sense? So if we're not practicing, just like, a lot of people practice scripts. If you're not practicing scripts for the phone, are you going to be efficient at delivering them? Anything that was a foreign language or calculating a value of a home, if you're not doing it often, you're not going to have the skill to do it. So if you decide to carry a device for your protection, make sure you're training with it. You know how to use it. You know what the considerations are for that use, whether it's cross-contamination with pepper spray, knowing what your backstop is, or being able to draw effectively from a concealed carry point, whether it's on your belt or in a bag, and deliver a firearm, present a firearm in an effective manner within a short period of time. I mean, know what those considerations are, and then train with that. Yes. What's most effective is it's going to be very individual. So if I'll give you an example. If you have a very effective most pepper spray is pretty effective in theory. Okay, so pepper spray is just that. It's the resin of pepper plants that is put into an evaporating liquid and then is shot out with some type of a propellant. A lot of times these reactions to pepper spray they're involuntary. It's not like someone's going to think they get sprayed and they're going to say, well, should I start crying or should I let my nose start running? It happens automatically. In most people, the eyes involuntarily shut, the mucous membranes open up, they start snotting and they can't open their eyes. I mean, for me, when I get hit with it, I cannot open my eyes up. It takes a long time. And then copious amounts of water. Quick side story. When I was working as an officer on our tactical team, I had to go to special training to deploy chemical munitions. So kind of a long thing to say if I wanted to instruct people on how to apply pepper spray or to deliver some chemical agent into a house to try to get somebody to come out, you had to be certified and be able to instruct on that. How they teach these classes a lot of times is not only the delivery but the exposure piece, because you got to know how you're going to react when you get hit with this stuff. Does that make sense? So if you're already stressed out because somebody's creeping you out and then you get hit in the face with your pepper spray because it splashed back, is that going to raise your anxiety level way up high? So it's good to know how you're going to react to these things. I react like most people react. When you get hit in the face with this stuff, your eyes close, you start snotting all over the place, and you're looking for water to wash your face out with. My last name starts with a W. So they had everybody in alphabetical order, and they would spray them, let it set, and then after about 30 seconds, you get to wash your face off. We were out in the desert when this happened, so the face washing station was a bucket. Now think about this. What happens when you get hit with pepper spray? You start snotting all over the place. So by the time it got to me, I think the bucket was probably half full of snot. So those are the drawbacks of having a last name that starts towards the end of the alphabet. So, yes? Yeah, with anything that you're going to carry with you, make sure that you can lawfully carry it. Does that make sense? Because you don't want to be, number one, you don't want to be stopped for something other than, well, you don't want to be stopped at all, I guess. But be stopped, have an officer see, well, what is that down there? And then now you're arrested for carrying a concealed weapon because you thought, well, it's just for my protection. That's kind of the story you get all the time when somebody has a weapon in a car. It's for their protection, but you want to make sure you're carrying it within the guidelines of state and federal law. So, well, I didn't want to discuss specific devices. I just want to get across to you that if you're thinking about carrying a device, do some more exploring. Get some training in order to use it, and then train often with it. Going to the range every couple of months may be adequate. Going to the range once and then carrying this weapon around, probably not adequate. So be able to deploy it effectively is the lesson here. All right. So This is, in a word, this is our strategy here, all right? Yes, really quick. Has anybody been in a knockdown, drag-out fight? There we go. Let me preface that. A physical confrontation where you're fighting with somebody. And maybe I should say out of real estate. How's that? There we go. So I think it's important. It's important to know that whenever you're tangling with somebody, that number one, doesn't matter what kind of shape you're in, after about a minute you're going to be almost exhausted to the point where you're falling down. That the incidence of injury, specifically lasting injury, is going to be very high, and that you're not always going to win. All right, especially if the person you're fighting with is drunk or high, and you're reacting to their actions. Right? I mean, you're not the aggressor here. Somebody's going to take action against you, and then you're going to, at some point, figure out that this isn't good and then react to it. And usually that gap of time, 4 or 5 seconds, somebody's already got the upper hand on you, right? So, I mean, you're already, in some cases, you're already injured, and you're going to have some issues. So the biggest thing we're looking for here is to get out of the danger, to spot it before you even need to engage and get out of the environment. Does that make sense? So Beverly Carter is what initiated this, and Dale was the catalyst to get this thing rolling. She was killed in 2014. She was a successful agent in the Little Rock area, had some clients that she had gone to multiple showings with, a couple, male and female, right? No real issues with, as far as the makeup of the couple. She trusted them, she had experience with them, went out with them, trying to find houses. They were planning to abduct her. They did abduct her at one point. We're going to try to elicit a ransom. During the course of this abduction, they killed her. I mean, there's no glamorous way to say it. They wrapped a bag around her head, put some tape around the neck of the bag, and she suffocated. And her family they didn't know where she was. They knew she was out showing a house. They weren't really sure where the house was. There was some time frame in here that she was gone, and the really scary thing is these people targeted her. It wasn't a random act or just one of these opportunistic events that occurred. They had singled her out, developed a relationship with her to develop trust, got her into a position where she was vulnerable, and then abducted her. So,
the most haunting aspect of that story is it was a couple. Don't you think? Don't you feel less threatened by a husband and wife? I mean, if they're there together, they don't seem threatening, right? I mean, that's just would be my assumption.
So that's the whole thing, though. I mean, and her son Carl Carter is the director of the Beverly Carter Foundation now. Operates out of Little Rock. It's a nonprofit that does a lot of agency safety training. So, yes. No, individual showing, taking them out. So, yeah. But one of the things that Carl does is he uses his mom's story as a way to train other people. What could have been done to maybe prevent this or maybe not have it occur? I mean, knowing this guy, who he actually was, this Aaron Lewis, he not qualified to buy a house, all right? She thought they were a married couple. Would a pre-approval with both names on it have been something that would have said, these people probably aren't really buyers here. I don't remember. I think there was more affluent homes that they were looking at too, and they maybe weren't qualified to buy the homes either. So anyway, this was the shockwave kind of through the real estate profession that got people thinking, what can we do differently? So here's some of our guidelines, and you have some guidelines in your packet too. I put stuff in red as takeaways. All right. So one of the biggest things, the two biggest things here. First one, mindset is everything. If you're totally focused on your property, you're totally focused on getting this listing or getting a sale with this buyer, there's not a whole lot of room in your head for, am I being safe? So you always have to have that in the back of your head. What are these things that maybe I'm picking up on that I'm ignoring? What should I be looking out for? How close is the individual standing to me? Have I verified who they are? You know, these types of questions that we should be asking ourselves. That we'll kind of go through this as well, but always have that save a little spot in your head for safety. You know, how you want this interaction to go. If it doesn't go that way, what is your plan going to be? That's the big thing. I mean, you can't plan for every scenario, but you can say if we're at A and B doesn't happen, I'm going to do C. And that's a consistent plan. Doesn't matter what B is, all right? If it doesn't happen, you're taking this other action. And we got to trust that gut and move forward with it. So,
Hey, Wayne.
Yes, ma'am.
Joni had a question.
Yes. Well, I'm not sure she knew exactly who they were or whether they were qualified to buy the home. I mean, the whole intent here, I guess looking from it, is it possible that there's going to be a person qualified to buy a $750,000 home that's going to mean you harm? It's possible. Is it likely? Probably not likely. If their intent is a criminal act, are they going to want to identify themselves to begin with a banker initially? I mean, what's the first step in buying a home, right? That's it. And if you're a good agent, what are you doing? Are you qualified to buy a home? You know, I really want to make sure I'm honing in my searches on things that A, you love, and B, you are qualified to buy. So it's really incumbent upon me to let you know that you need to talk with a lender first to figure out what you're qualified for.
I think in this case, the Forewarn app would have been helpful because wasn't Aaron just recently released from prison, jail?
I'm not sure.
There's something nagging in my mind that I read that somewhere, that he had been in jail at one time.
All right, so have a plan. We're on this the right side of these two columns here. Have a plan on what you're going to do. What's going to be that behavior you'll accept? I can't give you a red line on what'll work because you need to be trusting your own instincts on this. But be prepared either to take off immediately, have that plan, or to engage quickly and take off. But the point is to try to avoid any confrontations, any physical confrontations if you can. One of the things that I think some people are maybe not firm on is we have no legal duty to protect the home either that we are listing and having open for an open house or that we're showing. So we have no legal obligation to protect the property. And what I mean by that, let me make sure you understand what I'm saying. If something happens where you're creeped out by somebody in that home, your obligation is to get out of that home, not to remove them from that home. Does that make sense? If they're taking the TV because all they needed for you was to open that door for them, you're outside calling the police. And you're meeting that obligation there. But you don't need to be engaging people to tell them you need to be, to physically remove them from the home or keep them from taking something. You call the police department and have them do that. So with that in mind, it's better to be a good witness as to what's going on so you can relay that account of who you were dealing with, what they look like, what they drove away in, rather than engaging somebody and possibly becoming severely injured. Does that make sense? And then don't comply with the suspect. It's kind of a no-brainer. But if, as an example, if you go in the basement, I won't hurt you, does that sound like a deal? Get in the trunk and you'll be okay. So we're not wanting to comply with these folks. Try to put, and we'll talk again a little bit farther on some strategies to do that. But all right, we talked about accountability plan, the buddy system. I heard somebody else say having a system or a network of people that you can count on, that they know where you're going, when you're arriving, who you're going to be with, when you're leaving. And you need to check in before you get there or when you've arrived, and you need to check in when you've left. And if they haven't gotten a call from you either on the front end or the back end, what are they doing? either checking on you or they're calling local law enforcement to check on the address where you said you were going to be. Does that make sense? I mean, it's very simple stuff. It's not very complex. Now, you just got to make sure you're getting reliable people that are in your network, right? Because you don't want to be like testing them and then like the next day, hey, I forgot to call you. How'd that showing go? You want to make sure that if you're not contacting them, that they are taking some proactive measures to figure out whether you're okay.
Wayne, this is reminding me of a conversation you and I had recently about, and it's something we're thinking about talking to our safety task force about. Would it be a benefit to all of you if GRAR were to have an army of buddies who would say, hey, I'm somebody who'd be willing to go to help sit in on an open house if somebody has one coming up and they're not comfortable doing it alone. It would be a GRAR member, somebody you could reach out to. Maybe we could divide them up into, geographic territories that they cover. But if we could somehow have, little armies of realtors that, if you don't have someone in your office that's available to help, you have somebody who's stepped up and said, I'd be willing to do this for you. Do you think you'd take advantage of that if it were available? Yeah.
I guess, for the folks in this room, are you having difficulty when you have an open house finding somebody to go with you? Are you? Okay. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Lenders are a great resource as well. And in fact, over the
Lenders, any affiliate member.
well, we had a lender on one of the incidents with Mr. Clinton that stepped up with the agent, and his presence, I think, was helpful in discouraging Mr. Clinton from continuing his behavior. So, yes. I think you're right. So, no.
I think we should add them to the realtor store inventory. Tom and I were just talking. I don't see why we couldn't carry something like that in the store for you, like corrugated sign that you hang on the wall. Sometimes it's a matter of asking for forgiveness rather than permission. You could go, oops, I thought there was a camera.
Well, as a what if, I mean, there's so many portable web cameras that are out there right now, right? Why not have one at the entrance watching people come in? Is that a violation of the law? No. Especially if you have a sign posted out front that says, smile, you're on camera, right? Well, I would say that you make it as obvious as you can. You have a table right at the beginning of the entrance. You have your sign-in book, and there's a camera right there.
Well,
I would say all the better then, right?
Yeah.
So, right. No, I mean, I tell you, I bought a camera just a few days ago at Costco, and it tracks movement as well. You just set it on the table, and when people come in to sign in, if they choose not to sign in, I mean, what are your options if you are asking people to sign in? Yeah. So I would say that there's a lot of things that we're working on right now. Number one, can we require people to sign in? Yes, we can. If they don't sign in, what is their option? You can leave, but you need to sign in. Now, can they sign a bad name? Sure, they can. But does that, down the road, they're coming in and they've been to 3 open houses and they've signed the wrong name or a false name each time, and now we know that there's something up with these folks. We've contacted law enforcement, and it's John Doe who's going there, but he's signing in as Joe Smith. Does that show some type of a criminal intent or criminal, a deceptive practice? Yes. So yeah, I think that helps us more than it hinders us. Yes. Yep. So yep. These are some things that we've talked about. Yeah, with photographing, yes. Now, with regard to open houses, this is where we come into a bit of a problem, because remember that slide I said that said we have no legal duty to protect? There's some thought that the more action we take at the front end of an open house, the more we have a duty to protect that home. Does that make sense? So we're still trying to flesh that out, where the appropriate part is, especially when it comes to, I need to see your ID before you can come in, or especially the identification before coming in. So, and then the other thing is, oh no, I think that's fine. I'm just talking about open houses right now. I'm sorry. No, it's not. I think that as a buyer's agent, asking to see that before you meet with somebody, totally legitimate. I think that we may have some issues if we're requiring people to identify themselves at the entrance of an open house, though. Okay?
We actually had that request from members through our Facebook page about we think GRAR should have a membership-wide policy that says if you don't show ID, you cannot enter the open house. And we actually had a conversation, got a legal opinion on that, and our attorney said that you can have those individual company policies that indicate that, but as an association, it's not recommended for liability reasons. There's really no enforcement mechanism. And if you can't effectively make sure that everybody's doing that, everybody's imposing that requirement, you could open yourself up to the risk of
discriminatory practice.
Yeah, if you let somebody in without signing in, just because you happen to know them, but then the next person of a different race or disability or what have you is asked to sign in, you could have some liability there. So our attorney said, go ahead and talk about it in your own companies, but we probably shouldn't do that as an association.
And then the second part, again, to that is it may increase our duty to protect that home with regard to open houses. So a couple of quick questions. So we...
I think your seller can do that.
I think so. Maybe you talk. I mean, a lot of these things that we're talking about. How many people come on showings with you? Who do you want? And I'm being very general with this to coming into your home and showings. Can you say I only want pre-approved people coming into the home to see my home? I don't want tire kickers in the house. So or during your initial conversation with your buyer, the expectation here is, these are homes where people live. We can have probably 2 or 3 people come in. I'm going to need to know in advance how many people are coming with you, so I can keep track. And just another thing, especially when we have so many buyers and so many agents and so many overlapping showings, how many times have you been in a showing thinking you're by yourself, and all of a sudden you hear someone inside the house, right? And maybe they're not even represented. They just walked in the house. So how do we defeat that? Just real quick on that. Lock the door. As long as you know your client and you're good with your client, you're okay on that. What I'm saying is that to use it's appropriate. The evil you know is better than the evil you don't know, right? So I just don't want to have you caught off guard by having an open house, a house that's unsecured when you're going through with a client, looking at it and being safe. You've taken a lot of precautions, and now you've got an open property that somebody is coming in, and you're like, oh, who is this? I mean, I have people just because the house is so popular, they're driving through, they see a car there, and they just walk in, right? So securing that door is fine. I mean, make sure you put the key back up in the key box when you secure it, right? So that if it's an overlapping showing, that next agent can get on in. Does that make sense? That way the only people that are coming in are people who are... Yes. Yep, I understand what you're saying. And that's a good point. So
I just made a note. We'll put that on our safety agenda. I think it's safe to say, too, when we're talking cameras, we're talking about cameras from open houses to see who's coming in. But hopefully you've all been following the articles that have been coming out about just assume that there's probably a camera in every house you're showing. And legally, that's okay, according to our attorney, as long as it's not in a room where there's a reasonable expectation of privacy, like the restroom. But they do not have to. Nope.
no,
Right.
because a guest does not have a reasonable expectation of privacy in somebody else's home.
We have someone who's being very patient down here.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I agree with you. I agree with you. So,
And that's what we would love for the brokerages to implement that, just because our association attorney said that there's no way to effectively, if you're going to have a policy like that, there's liability for an association because it's not enforced and we can't ensure that it's consistently applied. But talk to your brokers about it, because you can do that internally as a brokerage policy.
all right.
What's to stop you from doing it individually? We all wait for the association or your broker, manager, someone else. Set it as your standard.
That's a good point.
Well, I guess it's really hard to say. Some bars are more persistent than others. I would say, I would say that to say that you need to produce ID to come in the home, probably not something you want to do. But to say, this premise is monitored and video recorded is probably a good thing. I mean, my standpoint is I'm probably not going to put a fake camera in. I'll probably put a real camera in because I want to track people coming in the front door. All right? If they're not, I mean, what's the biggest thing? Why do people not want to sign our book? They were going to call them, right? But I think we need to know who's coming into the home from the seller's standpoint, right? To keep track of how many people are coming in. So either they sign the book or I see who's coming into the home. Because I want to be able to narrow, if something happens in the home, I want to be able to say, officer, here's the flashcard of everybody who came in the front door. And I think that's fine. And especially if you're posting it out front. So I really need to hop through this. These are some important points right here. I'm sorry, Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. Wayne, I just wanted to address Jabo's comment that individuals should take up the gauntlet here and do this. And I think that's a great idea. Just as an example, if a broker of a company were to put a policy in place that everybody had to have pictures taken at the open house, how many agents do you think would object to that? A number. I mean, maybe not a lot. But my point is that becomes a competitive advantage for one broker saying, I do this or that I don't do this. So honestly, I think Jabo is on track when he says, don't wait for the broker to do this. It'd be wonderful if we could get together on that and put a coordinated effort into this. I don't see this as anything that has anything to do with monopoly. It's just safety. But I think that's still a little ways off.
All right.
About encouraging individual agents to do it? Sure.
Go ahead, one more. No, that's good. That's good. I think that's great for a couple reasons. First, they had more than one person there, right? Then you had kind of like a gatekeeper giving expectations on what behavior is going to be, right? So, all right, 911. When you call 911 for your cell phone, depending on where you are within the area in West Michigan here, you may not, the dispatcher or the call taker who takes your call may not be able to track exactly where you are. Most of the dispatch centers within Metro Grand Rapids are GPS enabled, and your phone has to have GPS enabled as well. Because if you got your GPS off on your phone, you call 911, the best they can do is kind of triangulate between cell phone towers. So the first thing out of your mouth when you call 911 should be what? Where you're at. And know where you're at is the big thing. Especially if you're, sometimes, you show 5 houses, they kind of blend together, right? Know you're at the third house, which is 831 Franklin, or whatever the case may be, right? So that's the first thing out of your mouth. And then leave the line open. You call 911, say I need help, I'm at 831 Franklin, and then you hang up. It doesn't do you any good. Keep the line open. The call taker will stay on that line with you. A lot of the information that may come over that line may not be intentional by you talking with the call taker, but the kind of the dialogue and the commentary going on may give the call taker additional information on the type of emergency you're having, where they should be entering the home, what floor you're on. Does that make sense? So, and then sometimes we can make these calls in a discreet fashion, and they're going to be answered just as if you're screaming on the phone. Does that make sense? So if you have an app on your phone, or you have the ability to dial 911 without the individual knowing that you're dialing, because you think that maybe if they knew it was going to escalate the situation, make sure that you're giving some type of commentary on what's going on in the home. And that commentary can be with the individual who maybe is posing a threat. So, if John was a threat to me, John, you don't need the gun. Why are we here at 831 Franklin? I was just going to show you this house. I thought you wanted to buy it. Does that give a lot of information to the call taker without directly talking to the call taker? Yeah. When I was working, we didn't have that ability. I'm not sure if they have upgraded right now. A lot of the departments have gone to a central dispatch function. So Grand Rapids is one of the central dispatch centers. Kent County is another. And even though you think you're calling Kentwood PD, you're actually calling Kent County Sheriff's Department. And then they dispatch out for these other agencies. So I'm not sure if I know it was being looked at, but I'm not sure where they are with 911 texting. So.
Tom and I are on a small subcommittee for the safety task force, and as part of that, we reached out to a number of law enforcement agencies in West Michigan, and that was one of the questions we asked. And so far, we haven't heard from any of them that they are accepting messages through 9.
Very good. No, I think that's a good idea. So we're going to talk about some other things tech-wise we can use. Yes, sir. I don't think that they're going to have that ability on their end to do that. So, yeah, I mean, they're definitely not going to have a screen. It's not going to be another cell phone. It's going to be, have anybody been to a dispatch center? It's a lot of lights and buttons and screens that have no images at all. And I thought, you think an officer's job is difficult. I think a dispatcher's job is 10 times more difficult than an officer, because you have one dispatcher controlling or supervising 10 officers, being able to hear voices or card numbers, trying to figure out where they're at. Trying to figure that out would be really difficult too. So, was there another hand up? I'm sorry. Okay. All right. So do your homework. And this is kind of the where we had some really good input here. We talked about buyer pre-approval. We talked about social media searches. I'll talk about crime mapping a little bit more, but some of those other things that we can do from the buyer verification standpoint is when you get that call, everybody has got a smartphone. Everybody has the ability, in most cases, I shouldn't be so blanket, to take a picture and text you a copy of their ID, right? If you're going to meet with them, they can take a picture of their car and license plate. I mean, I don't think that those are unreasonable things to ask for. And you make it part of that initial conversation you're having with them that, this is what I do. These are my processes. Or, hey, my broker makes me do this. Lay it on the broker's shoulders, right? But those are things that you can do to at least verify who this person is claiming to be, right? And then when you get to the location, the person in the ID should be the person that's meeting you, right? And if it's not, that's like a big red flag, isn't it? Or you're waiting in your car in the street for the person in their car to arrive because they've taken a picture of their car, but the car doesn't arrive. It should be another red flag, shouldn't it? Other than maybe they're not showing or they found another agent or something else. So don't meet the client at the property for the first time. Try to obtain that identification, a copy of their ID, some type of picture, a vehicle make, model, color, license plate. But the best thing to do, especially in order to have that initial conversation with the buyer, especially when things are so tight right now, is is have that conversation in a public place, preferably in your office, so that you can go over expectations. All these things that we're talking about here today with regard to precautionary steps for you, not only from a safety standpoint, but from a I'm not going to waste my time standpoint. Does that make sense? And then, we've heard a lot about this too. Bring a coworker or a friend with you. There's lots of folks out there now that would be willing to help. You just got to ask. And Julie and I talked about this pool of folks who are available geographically. If you can't find somebody, you go on and take a look and see who may be available to help you with your A showing or B open house. So, because we got it. I mean, this is a community. We got to stick together. Wear clothing that does not put you at a tactical disadvantage. Examples of clothing that puts you at a tactical disadvantage. With the exception of Julie, because Julie can kick wearing very narrow skirts and high heels. Especially if it's a pointed shoe and she's doing one of these kicks between the legs. That would be very, very hard. So, but, if our intent is to try to get out of there without engaging, we should be dressing in a fashion that lets us get out of there, because we're not going to be walking out gingerly in most cases if we're sensing danger. We're going to be running. So make sure you're wearing stuff that allows you to run. Make sure you have pockets where you can keep your keys and your phone. You don't need to lay it down on the center island when you come into the house. Yeah, and limit what you bring in with you in showings too, right? So, it's nice to have a bag, and I got crossbody bag here, but what is that for you? It's like a big strap that somebody can hold on to keep you from getting away, isn't it? Somebody grabs onto that, you're kind of stuck until it breaks. So, what I bring in with me, in most cases, I've got my phone with me, I got my keys on my person, and I've got a flashlight. Because if I'm going to check out the house and maybe there's not a lot of light, and it's very easily explainable why I got a flashlight, right? It's also very readily accessible. It's in my right hand. And if something happens, and it may not be my client, it may be somebody just walking in the home, and they present a threat, I've got something in my hand already. Does that make sense? And the little ever-ready plastic ones probably are not a good idea. All right, so get something that's a little beefier. And Costco's always got, and they're not plugging Costco, but they've always got these nice flashlights that are fairly inexpensive. It's you can do some damage with a flashlight. And I'm not saying you sit there and you beat somebody over the head with it, but if you knock them, in the leg or in the arm, it's going to distract them for a couple seconds, and then you just pivot and you take off. Does that make sense? And that's all it's for. And the other thing is, with these new LED lights, these things are like super bright, aren't they? Have you ever had your kids shine an LED flashlight in your face? It's like you're blind for an hour. Isn't that a distraction as well? So hitting somebody in the face with the light is a good idea as well. And they don't have to be huge like that. I've got a little one in my pocket right here, just as bright.
Hey, Wayne.
So, yes, sir.
Strobe lights help with dogs, I understand, too.
Yeah.
As well as people. If you have a strobe light going.
I know dogs don't like pepper spray either.
We're talking about safety primarily from a person perspective, but animals raise an entirely other type of risk. Correct, Maria. We've had animal attacks within our association. So beware of animals too.
And that's not even something I even thought about on this, but that's a great point.
Yeah. And for the gal who said, will the sign out front saying you're being recorded really make a difference? I think to myself, when I see a beware of dogs sign, it makes a difference to me. And I don't even know if there's a dog there. It's probably a Chihuahua, and those are the scariest ones out there.
Yes. Oh, very good. And I didn't get the buyer, did I? We're going to meet afterwards. You're going to tell me who he or she is. All right. A lot of the agencies in the area dump data into crimemapping.com. If you have a question about a neighborhood that you may be showing a house in, want to know what's going on, or you have clients that want to know what the crime is like in the neighborhood, this is the spot to refer. You don't have to be directly involved if you're referring them to this information, and you can kind of get a glimpse yourself of what's going on. So if you see, I don't know how big it is, but there's this little black one right here, and it's got a white mask on it. That's a sign for burglary. So if you're showing a house at night and the house is in an area that's got 10 or 15 of these little mask symbols right there, probably something you want to know, right? So, but just a lot of good information that's here. Yep. Assault. There's a little gun here too. So this is a capture from I want to say right there, October 19, 2016 through October 25th, 2016. So roughly a week. So, but you can narrow it to a radius of an address, the past week, past month, past year, type of offenses that you're looking for. It's a really nice system for the public to get information. All right.
We're all going to look up our own houses now.
You know what else is out there though? I mean, that's good as far as looking up and going back to homework. If we don't have these apps that are out there, I mean, and we do the social media search, have you ever done an SOR search on somebody? Sexual offender registry? Have you ever plugged your address into the sexual offender registry? Man, isn't that creepy? I mean, because you've got people that are within a couple miles of you usually. So, but I mean, that's another database that is a possibility for you to take a look at. So
I've heard though that that's one that's not always completely up to date. So not to get too freaked out if you see your neighbors showing up on that website.
as far as location and such, yeah. So arriving at the property early, kind of get a familiarity with the area. Try to develop or initiate your kind of proximity or environmental awareness of what's going on. Trying to figure out where you're going to park. Don't park in the driveway is the big thing. Don't get yourself boxed in. The car is an extension of your legs, right? You want to be able to get in the car and take off. So put your car in a spot where when you get in, you can take off. And then have your keys on your person and not in your bag that you've left on the center island again. So that when you get into your car, you can start your car and take off, right? And then what do most key fobs have these days as well? Yeah, hit that alarm. I mean, that's a distraction to the individual and calls attention to your car at least. So park it on the street is best. And again, don't get blocked in. Carry your keys on your person. Fobs with alarms are really nice. Reactionary gap is kind of a concept. It's law enforcement military concept. It essentially means when I say maintain a good reactionary gap is maintain enough space between you and this unknown individual where if they did something, you could see what they did, figure out whether it's a threat, come up with a plan in your head on what you want to do, and then execute that plan. Does that make sense? Seems like a large, long process, doesn't it? It's about 3 seconds. All right? Somebody comes at you with a club, it's kind of obvious what they're going to do, and your instinctual reaction is going to be to run. Now, what I'm saying here is, in maintaining that reactionary gap, you don't want these folks in your back pocket. Number one, because you can't see them, but number two, they're just too close. You let folks go ahead of you when they're showing a house, because you're not guiding them through the house, standing in front of them. You want to guide them from behind. Okay, here, I think the master bedroom is through here. Let them penetrate the room and go inside. You stand in the threshold of the door. You don't have to go into the room. Never put yourself, or never put the subject between you and your escape. Does that make sense?
And I'm certain the association can help with that through our safety task force. I also think when you're talking about going on these, 3 or 4 listing appointments a week and who's available to go, we talked about having this army of volunteers possibly, but you know what? We have, I would say, how many, Julie, per month, new members, 40 to 60 new members per month. And one of the things we encourage them to do is find a mentor and say, can I shadow you on a listing appointment? Can I watch you write an offer? So look around your office, because you have people right there that would love to learn, and they can be your safety net at the same time.
There was an example given with regard to hiring teenagers. I don't want to single anybody out, but did she left? Okay. I would probably not do that, just from a liability standpoint. You want to have somebody that is of age to make their own decisions. So just kind of caveat there. So
I was sitting here, though, and I thought I came up with this really great business idea when she said that, because you're all on our Facebook page always recommending college hunks removing junk, right? So I'm thinking, hey, what about college hunks removing punks? And we could have it for open houses, right? Just saying, it could work.
Yeah. Thank you, Pam.
We do bring her for the entertainment.
Yeah. All right, reactionary gap. It's not just space, though. It can be obstructions, right? If I've got a table between me and John, it's going to take longer for John to get to me because he's got to go around the table. A piece of furniture, a wall, something of that nature. I mean, those are great things to keep you safe. Know where your exits are. Know how to get out of a home. Another reason why you want to arrive early at the property, right? Yeah, and then how close are you to the people that you're working with? Not just from a proximity standpoint, but familiarization as well. It's the most dangerous part of a house. Why? All right. So if you're in the master bedroom, the bath in the master bedroom, is that just as dangerous as the basement? Yeah. So it's any place you can't get out of readily. And I'm not talking about diving through a window. I mean, you really need to be getting out of the house quickly. So, I talked about this real quick. Other than, letting your client lead, put yourself in a position where you can kind of observe what's going on, but at the same time be able to exit quickly. So they're going through the rooms. You're standing in the threshold of the doorway. And as they come back, you step back, let them go, and go to the next door and follow right behind them. So you're kind of trailing them on what they're doing. Now, again, this is with the level of comfort that you have with your clients as well. So, we already talked about don't put the client between you and your escape route. Open houses, again, safety in numbers. It's kind of common sense, especially when you've got 20 people, 30 people, 40 people coming through. As soon as it opens, being able to track everybody and keep track of where they're going is going to be difficult. Unlock and open all doors and windows, because you want to be able to get out of that house as quickly as you can as you're walking through, taking a look for maybe who's still in the home, right? Now, can people come into the home through those doors and windows? Yes, they can. But it's more important that you can exit than they can get in. Now, of course, at the end, you want to make sure you're securing all these doors and windows, right? But make sure that they're open for your escape plan. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot about that. Does that happen to anybody? You have an open house, you think everything's locked up, you go through and went, gosh, this window's unlocked. Yeah. So
we actually had an incident a couple years ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago now. A Keller Williams agent, I won't say her name, but I don't think she'd mind. But she shared it with Grauer. We reported it. She had an open house where she thought everything was locked back up afterwards. But an upstairs bedroom window had been unlocked by somebody, and they picked that window because the shape of the roof made it easy for them to get on the roof. And they actually came back that night when the homeowners were gone, but their teenage son was in bed, and they came in, tried breaking in through that window that they'd unlocked, and he heard them and called 911. But even sometimes second floor windows aren't safe.
Yep. So I require people on my open houses to sign in. If they don't sign in, they have to leave. Oh, thank you, Julie. It's well within your right, and one of the things we're looking at is not that we need another form, but something that specifically gives you authorization from the owner of the home to act as their authority for the property. So you can eject folks if you need to. Does that make sense? So you don't, I think it's for any officer who comes to a location where you say, hey, I'm holding an open house here, this person needs to leave, they're going to escort the person out. But it would be good from an enforcement standpoint to know that you have that authority to say this person needs to leave. Therefore, if they refuse, the officer can put hands on and arrest them. Does that make sense? All right. And then recording devices at entry points. I think it's a great idea. So it's just a matter of finding something that works for you. And I guess we have a concern about them being stolen. I guess, it's a possibility. But especially if stuff is being sent to the cloud, you may not have the camera, but you'll have a recording of the person taking the camera, maybe. So, weapons. We kind of talked about this, both from, I'll kind of encompass both of these sides here. Whether it's a self-defense technique or a weapon, you got to make sure you train with it. Know what the benefits and drawbacks are of whatever system you decide to use. I'm not pro-gun, I'm not anti-gun, but I don't think everybody is in a position where they should have a gun. And it's a personal decision for you, but even if you decide that you want a gun, know that pulling the trigger is a lot more than a mechanical process. Does that make sense? And the determination to take another person's life, which is what you're doing when you point and fire a weapon. You're not wounding. You're not shooting to hit them in the leg or the arm or anything like that. It's like an impossibility sometimes, unless they're standing totally still and you have a few shots sometimes, right? So when you're aiming a weapon at somebody, your intention is to neutralize that threat, which is a politically correct way to say you're going to kill them. So if you're not don't have that disposition where you can take a person's life, not saying that you want to, but you don't have that in you, you probably shouldn't have a gun, right? It's not something that you're going to brandish to scare somebody, because if you're not going to use it, what does that become to you? It's a threat to you.
Couldn't they also then turn around and file charges against you for? If
you don't have the proper justification for taking the weapon out, yeah, you could. So, and what is that justification? You have to have a reasonable fear or threat of death or serious bodily injury to yourself. So, somebody trying to commit a sexual assault on you, is that a serious bodily injury? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So, and it's all in how you articulate and how you perceive these actions as well. Yes? In the same place. Yeah. So that's a good thought. So yes, ma'am. Here we go. So this is research done by trying to think. Grossman, Lieutenant Colonel David Grossman. He wrote a book called On Killing. It's kind of a staple for law enforcement and some military. But they did some studies with regard to cognitive ability and fine motor skill ability and heart rate. So if you take a look at the top, we're talking probably normal resting heart rate at 60 to 80, above 115. We're probably jogging or on the elliptical trainer, kind of in that good area. He calls it white and yellow and red. Okay, these are conditions that he's talking about here. Okay, and what they found though was when our heart rate gets north of 145, we start to lose some cognitive ability, our ability to make good decisions. All right, adequately receive, filter through, and I guess reasonably sort through the information we're getting. If we're getting information, because if you get far enough into this heart rate, you start having the sensory deprivation, because your body can only do so much at one time, right? And one of the things that winds up happening is, as your heart rate goes up because of some hormonal inducement of fear, the blood in your extremities starts to pool into your core, and that's another one of those innate types of reactions that we have. Why is that? Because we know we're going to get cut or bit or whatever on our extremities. And we want that blood in these major areas to keep ourselves going. Does that make sense? So if you've ever had an adrenaline dump, one of the first things you find out when it's done is, gosh, my hands are cold. Does that make sense? That's why, because the blood is pooling into your torso. All right? But what that also does is, when your heart rate gets north, it not only is the cognitive ability affected, but also your fine motor skills. All right? So your ability to take out your phone and type in a 4-digit PIN number. Does that make sense? To go through a menu of options with regard to self-defense techniques, select one out of a multitude of them, and then apply that. Does that make sense? So this condition gray and condition black, you have a threshold of area where increased heart rate is good for performance. When you get past that, it shuts your performance down. How can we combat this? Ron, yeah. Yeah, avoid, don't get your heart rate that high by avoiding the issues. Or not avoiding the issues, that's the wrong thing to say. By avoiding the confrontation, that's one thing. Also, keep yourself in pretty good condition would be another thing to think about too, right? Because physical conditioning can offset some of these numbers. All right? And the other thing is, there's a concept called stress inoculation. All right? It's just like if you were getting inoculated for a disease. You kind of expose the body to that disease, and over the course of time, the body becomes immune to that disease. Does that make sense? So if you're going through scenarios that induce stress and force you to make a decision, and then you critique that decision on what could have been done differently or better, does that help you when that situation comes in, or something similar to it, that you're kind of inoculated from that stress? Because stress is going to increase that heart rate. Just like I said, like you're having a confrontation with somebody, you take out the OC, your heart rate's already jacked, and now you get a spray in your face. Now you're into this gray and black area. Julie. So this stuff right here, I'm sorry, Pam.
Like a sailor, if
Yes.
I remember correctly.
There's a side to Julie you've never seen before. Yeah. That we're probably going to save for retirement as a little clip on a video that'll go up. So, all right. This stuff here should not be a thought process on the back end. It should be a thought process on the front end. Does that make sense? You should be trying to figure out what you're comfortable with, what will work for you, whether you can apply these things before you need to use them, right? When you need to use them, it's not a thought process, it's a reaction. How is it a reaction? Constant application and training of the skill. That's how it's a reaction. Because you don't want to be thinking about how to do this stuff, you just want to be doing it. Does that make sense? Escape without engagement if possible. That's looking at these little things that get that gut going, trying to break away, engaging in conversation, maybe trying to de-escalate what's going on, but getting yourself to a point where you can break away and call police. And it's not something. Your embarrassment should not come into this equation at all. Oh, I'll be embarrassed if I do that. Oh, I couldn't do that to that person. Well, guess what? That's just taking a step forward, not taking a step back. And you want to get out of that situation. So, if you need to engage somebody, 100% force. All right? It's not like, well, I'm just going to give him a shove and then maybe he'll figure out that I don't want him near. You're shoving as hard as you can and then you're leaving. These applications or these techniques that Northern Tactical will instruct you on, they're not saying, well, just do this at 50% and they'll get the picture. They're saying 100%, get the hell out of there. Does that make sense? So that goes right back to that first bullet point on the first slide. Mindset is everything. Mindset is everything. We talked about adrenaline dump and that heart rate issue. Some of the things that you're going to, if you have an adrenaline dump and you don't use that hormone in your body, what happens? Your body reacts to it anyway. So the shaking is not fear. The shaking is your body trying to use this adrenaline and burn it off. So maybe go for a run or something when you're done. to burn that stuff off. Otherwise, just this is what you're going to be. And then if you do tangle, you're going to be exhausted when you're done. And it'll be a miracle if you're not hurt. So, talked about that. After it's done, make sure you self-assess for injuries. Seek medical attention. One of the first things law enforcement and medical are on the same number. It's the same number, same thing you need to be doing. Give them a call. When it's safe to do so, advise your brokerage of what happened, and then give Pam a call. Pam is a clearinghouse for all these incidents that we have. She does a wonderful job sharing that information, which is his next point. I mean, this is so important. We've already talked about it. Sharing what's going on allows us to attach and connect these dots that sometimes we're missing with regard to suspect behavior and patterns of behavior. Because we have, I mean, personally, I think Mr. Bill Clinton he's a predator in the making. All right? He's taking these little baby steps to where he's going to do something more significant. And if we're not tracking that as an association in the community, then we're intentionally putting each other at risk because of a lack of action. So make sure when you have an issue that you're letting your brokerage know, you're calling law enforcement to make a report, and then you're sharing that with Pam. Was there?
Barb had
Yes.
that the public is looking at you. That's a good point.
Yeah, and that's something I talk to new agents about is, how much do you share on your social media page about what's going on in your life? You get a lot of these suggestions that are business oriented about, humanizing yourself and letting people know that you're not just about selling homes, but then you run a risk when you're doing that and you're sharing that much information. So, yes, sir. Now, I guess the important thing to Tom and Dale and Pam and I kind of observed this as everybody was sitting down. What are we seeing in the audience here? What's our composition look like? Yeah. All right. And is that a cultural issue, you think? I mean, I salute the guys that are here because it's not, this isn't a male or female issue. It's a professional issue. It's an issue that we all need to address, whether it's from the standpoint of protecting ourselves or protecting those that we work with. Does that make sense? So, changing our perspective on what we need to do in our job is huge, because I think that, I don't know, and maybe it'll change folks that are here right now. I think you're inclined to understand that the job is risky, that there are certain risks that maybe you have taken in the past, and coming here you're like, I'm not going to do that anymore. But you need to take that affirmative step yourself to realize that you need to change your perspective. You know what I'm saying? We have a lot of people out there that don't want to take that different perspective. They don't want to look at this job from a different perspective. And I think that sometimes that's evident in how, whether it's male or female, we approach a job. I think Kay indicated that she thought she was, invincible or a formidable force. There's always someone who can knock you on your butt and have their way. So don't be disillusioned with that. Be proactive with it. Yes. I think that we have enough of a handle on it where if you resurfaced again, and hopefully everybody, if he comes in and acts peculiar with any of you folks, you're going to be on the horn to Pam, and Pam's going to say, well, you know what? Describe what he looked like. What did he say? Yeah. This is where we run into an issue of legal liability and how much we are allowed to release, because between defamation and libel, we can put the association at huge risk by posting something about somebody who's not been convicted of a crime. Does that make sense?
I'm glad you asked the question, though, about the photo, because that came up a lot when we sent out the safety alert. We've got a lot of responses to me, to Julie, on our Facebook page asking for the photo. And Amy was on the ball, and she got a photo. She got a photo of him, and she took a picture of his car. Problem is, the problem is the association can't distribute those photos because he hasn't been charged with a crime. So we'd be exposing ourselves to allegations of defamation. Having said that, if he, by the way, he's about, how tall would you say? He's stout, 5'8", 5'9", maybe 60, balding, glasses, stout, just a generally creepy air about him. He's not going to sign in. He's going to go to female open houses. He actually visited Wayne's open house.
So this is, my first name is Whitney, all right? So sometimes when my open houses go out, it says Whitney Woo. So he actually came in, signed in, and he like looked around. It was vacant. Came in, looked at me, stayed for about 2 minutes, turned around, left. So
that wasn't the Whitney he was looking for.
Yeah.
But if you think he came to you, I'm not convinced. I'm not personally convinced. I think this guy's a predator. I do. And I'm not convinced that one conversation with the sheriff is going to stop him. So if you think he showed up at your open house, come in and call me. Come in and talk to me. I can't send a mass distribution of this photo, but I can maybe show it to someone to see if it's the same guy, maybe. So we'll do our best to protect you and figure it out. Brenda.
He's been throughout the county, yeah.
Yep,
We
and
have
the
him
price ranges went
in several different locations throughout the county. So
900,000.
now, what Pam's talking about kind of shines a light on something else that we need to be really careful about is our Facebook page on GRAR and how we distribute information there. And we can be very general in the newsletters and be specific with descriptions, but I think sometimes we have the potential of getting ourselves into trouble when we start a conversation thread that sometimes goes off topic and gets a little extreme, especially if something happens to this individual. Because everything that's on social media, number one, is always going to be there, never going to be deleted, and B, is going to be discoverable. And there's not going to be a defense attorney around that's not going to want access and records to the GRAR Facebook page if we have an interaction with an agent and a individual who's shot. So just how much we share on that page, and I think you guys remember that article that came out about a week and a half ago about a lady who had a interaction with an individual at the Rockford Mire, and she posted some Facebook information with this picture, right? So she was ordered to take that down because that presented an issue of defamation and libel for her, set her up for huge liability, and it turned out that probably was not the guy. But I think the jury's still out on that one. So
when Wayne says the jury's still out on that, we're not making accusations. But
nope.
But boy, the picture that they displayed in her Facebook post sure looked like a stout, balding guy with glasses. So
and I'm not saying that. And they identified the guy who was in that picture. I'm not saying that he's not the fellow who was exonerated. What I'm saying is, I don't doubt that maybe that individual was in the mire following her, and maybe she just got the two individuals confused, took a picture of the wrong guy. Because this guy frequents that area. So he's from this Rockford, Sparta area. So, Bill Clinton is. So just be cognizant all the time. Just because we're saying that we think we've resolved this Bill Clinton issue, don't think that it's resolved totally. We always want to be cognizant and aware of potential predators that are coming in through our open houses. And I'm going to kind of fire through this real quick, and then I'll take some questions at the end, if you don't mind. So in your packet, you should have some information on Northern Tactical Development. This is a company of active duty and retired law enforcement from this area. I've worked with these guys, if not best trainers in the Midwest. They're among the best in the country for what they're doing. GRPD, Kent County, some of the best trained officers in the nation. So, and they're applying a lot of this information right to our job. It's something that the previous safety task force took up with these folks. All right, check. If you don't know already, both your iPhone and your Samsung Galaxy have an application. You need to activate it. Just look it up. Either search iPhone SOS or search Galaxy SOS, where you can send an SOS message fairly discreetly to identified people within your network. There are some limitations. The iPhone process is very complicated and takes a lot of this complex motor skill we talked about that deteriorates as your heart rate goes up. The Galaxy application doesn't require a whole lot of effort, but you only alert one person. If that person's busy, they're probably not going to respond. The big one here, though, is the Wear Safe device. I've got it right here. This is as big as it gets. You need to have your phone with you. If you have an issue that you think you're being threatened with, besides trying to get out, you want to make sure you got help coming. So it's as simple as clicking this button. It starts this application on your phone and your network's phones. They get an immediate notification that you may be having an issue. At the same time, a recording of what's going on around you is sent to them so they can hear what's going on. And it's consistently sent. I don't know, about 30 to 40 second bits of audio recording that's coming from your phone are over and over being emailed and texted to these folks so they can listen about what's going on. If they think that you're having an emergency, they just hit the 911 button. So this would be the screen of one of your people in your network. They would get that, in this case, Sarah Ackerman may be having an issue. They get these recordings of Sarah Ackerman on their screens. They can tap them and listen to them. If they think Sarah's having an issue, they hit the 911 button. When they hit the 911 button, it sends that call to the 911 dispatch center where your network person is. It may not be where Sarah is. But how they compensate with that is, part of the information that you get in this app is Sarah's GPS location. You relay that to the 911 dispatch center. They know exactly where that is. They forward the call to the appropriate 911 dispatch center. Does that make sense? Now,
page in your packet describes the Wear Safe if you want to take a peek at what Wayne is referring to.
6 months, it costs $10. All right. We got a deal. They give us 6 months free, and then it's approximately $5 a month thereafter. So very inexpensive. It takes one of those nickel-sized batteries, 2032 I think it is. If you ever go to IKEA, you can get like a pack of 20 of them for $3 or $4. The battery lasts about 3 months, and there's a battery check indicator on the app so you can figure out how much battery you have left. But young lady with that I spoke with the weapon, she carries it right on her holster. What I would recommend is you carry it in the same spot all the time. All right? So I have mine on my belt. I know it's always here. I don't have to look for it. I know where it's at. I just reach down and tap it. Does that make sense? It could be underneath your coat. Yes.
Before we lose everybody, tell us why, we know why Wear Safe is so important for us if we feel threatened, but why might a gentleman like yourself want Wear Safe?
Yes, good point. So maybe we're showing female clients a home as a gentleman, and there's some interaction that may not be appropriate that you're concerned with. May not be a physical threat, but could it be a legal threat later on? Hit the Wear Safe device. It starts recording that conversation right away. All right? Gives you at least a little bit of recorded insurance in case an allegation is made. No, that's not what has happened. Here's what has happened.
Correct.
What's that?
Correct.
Oh, come on. Julie. So it's good for males as well. I mean, I would want law enforcement coming there as soon as possible if I'm having an emergency. Now, that said, make sure your network are people who are going to respond to these alerts right away and not like, hey, what did you need the other day? You know? Probably not going to do a good job for you. All right? And then also, you can buy as many of these as you want. I bought one for my wife. My daughter, who is at college, has one. My niece, who's at college, has one. My mom has one. It's not restricted to realtors. So,
table in the hall. If you'd like to get one today, you're welcome to do that.
All right. I appreciate your attention, and I definitely don't want to end this right now. But I understand people have to go. I just want to thank Dale and Tom and Pam for the attention that we're getting on this issue, and hopefully this isn't the only one we have. I mean, it was very well attended.
You know, before we leave, Julie, I'm gonna have you come up just for a minute.
Oh, yeah, I'm
okay,
sorry.
So, all right. I'll read it for you. We have one story we want to share with you before you leave. We promised some real stories. And if you have to sneak out, you can. But this is a story that happened. It says, I received a call from a man who said he'd been referred to me. I asked by whom, and he offered a name that was unfamiliar to me. But I didn't want to admit that since it could have been an acquaintance or former client. He said that he owned a house in Coopersville, but was being transferred out of state for work and would like me to list his property. We set up an appointment for 7 p.m. In looking at where the house was located in a rural setting and knowing that it would be dark because it was early sunset in winter, and the fact that I was single at the time and no one would be expecting me home that night, I decided to invite a male associate to visit the property with me. However, my associate wouldn't be available until 7:30. I tried to call the homeowner to push the appointment back, but the phone number he provided was disconnected. This seemed odd, but could also be related to the fact that he was soon moving. So we decided to go to the property at 7:30 and just explain why we were late. Upon arrival, the homeowner answered the door and seemed surprised that I was not alone. He wouldn't make eye contact with us at all, acted very awkward, and told us to just look around on our own. The main level of the house was furnished, but upstairs we found 2 bedrooms. One was unfurnished and the other was painted black, both walls and ceiling, with ghost-like images painted on the walls. The room had just one twin-size bed in it. My associate and I were both very unsettled when we entered that room and agreed that we just wanted to leave the property. We actually had to hunt around to find the homeowner and eventually found him in a small room off the back of the kitchen. I indicated that I would do an analysis of the value, but asked how I could reach him since the number he gave me was disconnected. He said he would call me. We left, and I never heard from him again. In hindsight, I believe he was trying to lure me to that home alone, and I shudder to think of what might have happened. Scary, right? That happened to someone in this room. That happened to Julie. Julie was a realtor before she was CEO of GRAR. So a story, yeah. Yet I hear this story and I think that could happen today too. That wasn't something isolated. And we have pages of stories. And if you'd like me to email them to you without names attached, I'd be happy to, because it would be a great topic of discussion in your next office sales meeting.